Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Brett and I am an artist. And today I want to share with you how I actually became an artist. And the reason I'm sharing this is because I didn't become an artist. I didn't even start painting or doing anything until I was in my 40s. And I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe it's you who's watching today, that feel called to make art and to create, and you kind of feel like you missed the boat if you didn't do it when you were younger. And that you don't really understand, well, is there even a path to doing this? Is it just going to be a hobby? Like, what does that even mean? I think if you feel called to do art, then you should absolutely do it. I mean, yes, you can do things with your art. You can go as far as you want. The age is really not a factor, and there are just a million paths to doing this. And your path will be unique to you. But I wanted to share my story because it's really different than like somebody who makes art when they're a kid and then they go into art school and then they figure out a career after they get a degree. That's a more traditional kind of path. And even that, a lot of people do that and then they don't end up becoming artists because they think, oh, I can't make a living at it. So I didn't do it until I was in my 40s. And if this is you, absolutely, if you feel called to make art, you should make art. And so I'm just going to tell you my story so you can kind of see the progression of how what we do in our minds and how we approach this really results in where we go with it and what it means to us. But art is so satisfying. Like, there's just something so wonderful about making art. It's just, a lot of us have had careers or have done things where you don't really feel like you can actually make something, or you can see something through from beginning to end. Maybe you're just like one component of a bigger company or a bigger process. Art, you get to like go from right soup to nuts. It's like you can take the concept, you can paint anything you want, do anything you want, and develop it and make it into something, and then you've created something and maybe you can even sell it. And so that's really, really satisfying. There's something about painting that just puts you in that flow state. It's very peaceful. It's a growth thing. It's very therapeutic. And so anyway, I'm gonna just cut to the chase and I'm gonna tell you how I got into this and how I got to where I am today. And I hope it will inspire you. So I'm going to start at the beginning. When I was a kid, I never even thought about painting or doing any kind of art. In fact, it seemed like some sort of mysterious process that I just didn't understand or I didn't really even have that much interest in. I might have colored with crayons. I don't know, probably did. But I just didn't even think about it. And actually, I've always been in the creative arts though. So I grew up in a dance studio, basically. I mean, I was always dancing, and I started doing Broadway shows and musical theater when I was very young. And I was basically an actor, and I was a singer, and I was doing all of that stuff well into my 20s. And then I started to get dissatisfied with that lifestyle, even though I'd done it my whole life. And I started to get interested in writing. So then I became a writer, and I started working, doing freelance writing, and I had published some fiction, and I was doing different things with that. And I was really enjoying the process of writing until the internet started to get bigger, and I know I'm dating myself now, and blogs were getting really big, and people were self-publishing, and literature and what writing was and how it was published and how it was created seemed to shift in a big way that I didn't really relate to and I didn't really like, and I started to lose interest in writing. And then at the time, my ex-husband and we had built a couple businesses, and we found ourselves in a position where we could travel a little, so I sort of put writing on the side, and we went traveling for a while. And we went to Europe, and when I was in Europe, I was in Paris, and one day we went into the Louis Vuitton store, which is like the flagship store in Paris to become a big tourist attraction. I guess people like to look at $10,000 purses with monograms on them. So I was in there, and I just thought it was kind of boring, and I didn't even understand why I was in there. And then I looked, and at the middle of the store, there were these journals that they were selling. They were beautiful. They were like hardbound journals. And there was one for each city, like there'd be a London one and a Paris one and a Rome one. And so what they did was, inside the journal, there were these beautiful watercolor sketches, like of different monuments. So for instance, if you had the Rome journal, there'd be a painting of the Colosseum, and then there'd be space where you could like write your thoughts about, when you were at the Colosseum. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. It would be really fun to do maybe some travel journaling and paint some pictures while I'm traveling. So I got myself some paints and I got a little journal and I started to do some watercolors, but I wasn't very good at it and it was really intimidating and I really didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have very good quality watercolor paints, which I didn't know at the time is really important. And I just felt like the results I was getting wasn't very good and I didn't feel very confident about it, and so I stopped. So fade in, fade out, that was my first little foray with art. Several years later, my ex-husband and I ended up getting divorced, and I was married very young, and we were married for about 25 years. I had never lived on my own. I'd never made money on my own. I was just completely freaked out about getting divorced and being on my own. I didn't know what to do with myself. And thankfully, the divorce was very amicable, but one thing I did was I didn't want to end up fighting with him over who gets to keep the furniture and stuff like that. So I left the marriage with very little material stuff, and I just didn't have a lot of furniture. And I moved into this condo, and I needed things. So I thought I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on furniture because I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to be. I was kind of a mess. And I just bought some side tables on Craigslist one day for my bedroom. And they're beautiful, really high quality side tables. I'd gotten them at a very nice price. But when I put them in the bedroom, I thought they didn't really work. Like I didn't really like the color of them. They were just light wood. And I remember they just didn't look quite right. And I had this thought like, maybe I could paint them. And at the time, painted furniture was kind of becoming popular. And I'd never done anything handy. I'd never painted anything other than that little travel journal. I didn't know anything about it, but I thought, well, that might be something fun. Like maybe I could paint them. So I went online, and there were a lot of bloggers at the time starting to post projects and tutorials about how to paint furniture. And I started watching them, and I got really obsessed with it. And I got all this stuff from Home Depot. It was really fun. And I started painting these side tables, and I painted them like 3 different times because I was just experimenting with different techniques and colors and paints and stuff. And finally, the 3rd time, I really liked the way they came out, and I thought, this is really cool. I'm gonna get some more furniture and paint it. And it became this thing where I was just obsessed. I was buying furniture all the time. I had it all stacked in my garage, and I always had a project going in my kitchen. And it wasn't long before all of a sudden I didn't have room for anything else. Like I had enough furniture now, but I still wanted to keep painting furniture. It was incredibly therapeutic at the time. And I found when I was painting, I wasn't worrying about the future. I wasn't focused on the divorce. I wasn't feeling upset. I wasn't freaked out. I was just really, I felt so peaceful, and I was really in this flow state. I discovered, and I think this is probably true for any artist, there was just something about putting a paintbrush and paint and putting it on a surface that was so satisfying and calming to me, and I just wanted more of it. Like I wanted to do that all the time. So I had all this extra furniture, and I just decided to try and sell it, and it sold, and I started to make some money, and just like that I had a little side business, and it was really fun. So I did this furniture side business for about, I don't know, several years. And it was just so good for me, and I just learned so much, and I kept getting better at it. But then at some point I started to just feel this like dissatisfaction, like it wasn't just enough to paint furniture and kind of give it a style. I really wanted to do something more artistic. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe I could do art furniture. I don't know. So I started to play around with that. And I did make a few like art pieces. In fact, I'll throw a couple of these up on the screen. Like there was one chair I remember that I collaged. And then there was another chair I made like this love chair. And that was really fun. And it was really satisfying to me, but it was also, I was really conscious, of these art, furniture is just, it's bulky and it's big and it's hard to source it. It takes a lot of time for all of that. And I was kind of getting frustrated with that. I thought, I don't want to make a lot of art furniture that's sitting around and I can't do anything with. So, and I was also feeling like doing furniture was getting really hard on my body because, you're on the floor a lot and you're just moving things. And so I thought, what if instead of doing furniture, like I actually learned to paint? And that just seemed like the most radical idea ever. But there was something about it that just really drew me. Like I was really curious and I really wanted to learn to paint. So I went and I got some paints, and I think I got some paper, and I started playing around with it, some acrylics a little bit. And my paintings sucked, like they were horrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I started to read some books and look at a few tutorials, and I was trying things, but I really wasn't happy with the results I was getting. And then I remember the day that I went, I think, to Michael's, and I decided I was going to try painting on a canvas. And I remember I was like so afraid to buy a canvas. I thought I just like wasn't deserving of buying a canvas because it would just be wasted, because I would, I'd paint on a canvas and it would be horrible and then I'd end up throwing it away. But so I bought these, like, I think they were like 6x6 canvases. They weren't very big. I did it anyway. I just bought the cheapest ones and I took them home and I started to play around with them. And I was actually feeling like, okay, I was getting a little bit of skill, but really not much. And then I thought, oh, I don't just have to limit myself to paint. Like, people do things like collage, and I started to get interested in collage. So then I started to do more collage, and actually I was pretty successful with some of my collages early on. In fact, if I find it, I'll throw this one up on the screen. I did one of my dog that I was actually pretty proud of. I mean, now it kind of looks a little amateurish, but it was a first thing that I did that I thought was kind of fun and satisfying. And so I started to think, well, wow, I could do more collage, and I could collage and paint. And then I realized mixed media was a thing, and people were doing stuff with stamping and different materials. And so I started to play around with mixed media, and I got really into that. So about this time, my partner at the time decided that he wanted to move back to California. He used to live there and his business was good there, and he was kind of pushing me to move to California to go to Santa Barbara. And I was like, I don't know, Santa Barbara is really expensive, but he was very persuasive, and I thought, well, it's not the worst place to live, right? And then I realized, hey, there's a big art community there, maybe I could learn more about art. So we moved there January 1st, 2020. And when I got to town, I realized that the City College was about to go back, and the next semester was about to start, and I could actually take classes. So I signed up for some classes. And for the first 2 months of 2020, I had a blast. I was going to art school, and I was riding my bike, and I was painting all the time, and I was starting to actually feel like I was making a little progress, especially with the class. One thing about going to art classes when you're in your 40s versus when you're in your 20s is that you're taken much more seriously. The teachers, the great thing about Santa Barbara, it's one of the best places to take art classes because of there's this huge art community, and it's expensive to live there. So all of the artists, they want to supplement their income by teaching. And so you get people that are really accomplished artists that are teaching. And I had the guy who taught our class was so amazing. He really took an interest in my work because he could see that I was really into it and I really wanted to learn. And he was very encouraging, and I think he gave me a lot of extra time and attention, and I just went with it. I just went for it. And I was learning so much. And then, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. The whole world shut down. And I have to say that being in the pandemic in Santa Barbara, after having had that experience of starting to paint, was so fortunate because I had a room in the house we were renting to paint. And that's how I got through the pandemic. I spent every day in that room painting, and I just kept going, and I kept working on things, and I kept experimenting with different materials. And that was it was so comforting to me, and it was a way to kind of get away from all the craziness that was going on at the time in the world and just focus on something creative and beautiful. And then my partner and I ended up leaving Santa Barbara at the end of 2020, and for the next 2 years, we were living somewhere else where we didn't really know anyone, and the pandemic was still kind of going on. But I had this big loft in the house we bought, and I painted every day. And I started to, because I had this space and nothing else to do, and I just decided to just take some big risks. So, if I wanted to make a painting that was, 30 by 40, I just bought the canvas and I just played around and I did it. And I did murals on the walls of the house. I did all kinds of things. I just kept painting. I kept trying new things. I kept learning. And I started to get better at it. And this is, I think, where I was really starting to make some progress. And then after those 2 years, I was starting to feel more like, wow, maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I was starting to get a little more skill. And after those 2 years, some things shifted in our relationship. We ended up breaking up. And so the first thought I had was, I want to go back to Santa Barbara and finish what I didn't get to do in 2020. So I came back. And this time though, I came back with a lot more grit, I'd say. I actually had a small portfolio of work that I thought wasn't bad. And I had a little bit of skill, and I kind of knew what I needed to do, like what I wanted to work at. And so I started to take classes again. And one thing I did that was really great, and I recommend anybody who paints does this, is I would take pictures of my art and I had them in a folder on my iPhone. So anytime anybody asks what I did, and I still do this to this day, it's like having a portfolio on your phone, and you can just show everybody your work. Like, they don't have to come over and see your paintings. You don't have to, you don't have to tell them anything about it. You can just show them your work. And so I started to do that. I got there and I started painting a lot. I was producing a lot of work, and I kept adding to my portfolio on my phone. And anytime I talked to anybody, anytime I met someone new, I showed them my work. And that was how I started to get art gigs. So people would ask me to do stuff for their business. I got offers to do commissions. I had a show. I did a live painting. I was doing all kinds of things. It was really fun. And I also applied to when they had calls for artists for different projects and things, and I was getting selected to do that, and I got busy. And it was just, I realized that part of it was that I had developed some skill, and I kept learning, and I worked at it, and part of it was just a confidence thing. And I realized that, nobody's ever gonna give you permission to do this, ever, even if you're really amazing at it. You kind of become an artist, I think, the day that you decide that you are, and you, with confidence, tell people, hey, I'm an artist and I do this. You're never gonna get to the point where you feel like you're amazing enough to own that completely. The truth is, the artist that I am today is not the artist I'm gonna be in 10 years. 10 years, I'm gonna be even more amazing, and I'm probably gonna be working even differently and doing different things. But I'm a much better artist today than I was 5 years ago when I started, and I that's always going to be true. You're always going to be in process, but you can be an artist the minute you decide, this is enough. Like, I'm good enough, I'm ready. And when you decide you're ready, other people are going to respond to you that way. There's a real difference between, like, when I show people the portfolio on my phone, there's a real difference between when I would show it to them early on and not feel very confident about it and kind of go, yeah, I sort of paint, and I'd show them that. And then the whole time I'm wondering, like, did they think it's any good? Do they think I'm, deluding myself or whatever? Versus today, when I go, yeah, I'm an artist, and I show my stuff, and I feel really good about it. If they don't like it, that's their problem. I'm doing the best I can. I keep working, and I feel good about my work. And they look at it different. When they know you feel good about it, they take it more seriously than if you just kind of are being really wishy-washy about it. So that's something that's really key. Your mindset in this is everything. Art is a wonderful thing because it really helps you to confront your soul. You're seeing, the things that you're painting and the things that you're looking at are the things that you're interested in. It teaches you so much about yourself and about life, and it really puts you in flow state, and it gives you so much. So my whole point in sharing this whole story is to say that if you are thinking about painting, and if you're wondering if you can actually do something with this, yes, you can. Do it, by all means. Even if you never sell one thing, just painting itself is such an enriching experience, and so satisfying and so rewarding, and will really positively affect your life. So I guess I'm done here. I hope you enjoyed this video and it was helpful to you. Please like or subscribe, because I am trying to obviously get the channel out there if you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one.